important. Like for what?
As soon as you drop the soap, they rip your butt.
Jailed early this morning. He went to jail early this morning, and the police report described him as 5'9" and 140 pounds. Or as his cellmate put it, just right.
I really wanted to make sure.
Wasn't asking.
And open wide.
What are you doing?
Defamation. Answer, yes. The 6-week defamation trial brought both exes to the stand to make claims of abuse.
Assault lasted minutes, but what he was effectively telling me while he held my genitals in his hand was that he held the power, that he was in control.
It's not funny though. Can I tell you why it's not funny? I don't want to upset any of the audience because I completely appreciate the fact that you're here, but I'll tell you why I don't think you should laugh. If this was the other way around and a woman was sat here and a bloke had locked her in a flat and she had to jump out and injure herself, you lot would not be laughing. You would be saying, he's a complete nightmare, he should be locked up and that's disgraceful.
If you clicked on this video and watched through that little montage, chances are you really like movies, but know the industry has its problems. Some problems that, if left unchanged, will undoubtedly make the next generations much worse than the one we have right now. The problem we'll be tackling today is if you haven't guessed that already by the obvious thumbnail and title, is the use of male abuse for cheap comedy and laughs in the film industry. Now, I want to tackle this topic because it's not a topic that's brought up a lot, and the only videos I could really find about them were these two from Pop Culture Detective. And while those were great videos, and I definitely recommend you check them out, I wanted to give my own more lighthearted spin on this topic, as I found Pop Culture Detective's videos quite hard to understand, but maybe I'm just a dumbass and everybody else understood them perfectly fine. I also want this video to actually offer some ways on how to change this issue or this problem and why we should change it in the first place and what effect it has on our society. Mostly for people who are looking to work in this industry, because these people are the future of cinema after all. This video is divided into 5 different sections. Now normally I'd give these sections a funny catchy title, but then I'd be doing the exact thing I'm criticizing. So instead, I'm going to put as much effort in.
Don't get me too horny, ladies. I'm trying to watch soccer.
By the way, a big disclaimer. This is of course not me. I'm not going to use comedy or memes at all throughout this video. As I said, this will be a more lighthearted spin on the topic. And as a wise man once said, it's about the subject of the joke. Ricky Gervais. These are the sections. What types, why they occur, why change, and how to change. Now, whilst you can skip to a certain part of the video that you would like to hear yourself, I definitely recommend you sit all the way through, because some parts, especially the second and the third part, play heavily into the other parts, and then at the end of the video, you'll have no clue as to what the fuck I'm rambling about. Also, more watch time is good for me, so with that all said and done, let us journey through this tale of double standards and violence together. This first section is a little bit like the vocab list you get at the start of your school books, as to prepare you for terms that will pop up a lot, whilst also giving you a quick explanation as to what they actually mean. Only here it's for terms you'd rather not hear at all, and could get me banned in my first ever video. Really smart choice there. Luckily, this section is very short, as the terms do not need much explanation, and to explain why they are funny and why they occur, it will be in the why they occur in comedy aspect sections of the video. First off, we have S-abuse. And no, I'm not going to say the full word, but I'll give a tip for little Timmies out there watching. It has to do with the big U. When this type of comedy is used, we can either have a female perpetrator or a male perpetrator. Now, if you're wondering why I put the sus meme at male perpetrator, that's because, another disclaimer, the target of these abuse jokes is largely, if not always, heterosexual men. While we will be covering this type of abuse, Pop Culture Detective already made the 2 large videos on this topic, and I primarily want to focus on the other type of abuse, which is used for comedy, and this is just plain good old violence. To be able to cover this, we'll have to take a peek back in time. Now prepare yourselves, because this thing has more lore than a Pepsi logo change. I don't understand why it has so much lore either. I mean, look at all those pages. But anyways, let's move on. During the 16th century, there was a popular Italian theatrical form that flourished throughout Europe. This being especially popular in a country that everyone despises, France. That's my entire French audience gone. Oh. The theatrical form was called commedia dell'arte and first appeared in 1545. The theatrical form was based upon a variety of literature works containing many characters and costumes, all based on the theme of clowns. One of the primary characters is our shining star, our god, our savior, Harlequin. Now, Harlequin is a witty, nimble servant, and in the early stages of Commedia dell'arte, he is described as cowardly, superstitious, and plagued by a lack of food. In other words, he's a Karen during the pandemic. Just the worst kind of human being you can encounter all around. Oh yeah, he's also described as being gay. Just want to point that out, yeah. Harlequin's costume originally consisted of a peasant's shirt and long trousers, both covered with many colored patches. It later evolved into a tight-fitting costume decorated with triangle and diamond shapes. This upgraded costume included a baton, also known as... So now we get to our second and more well-known part of our little history lesson, that being of slapstick. A comedy style inspired by commedia dell'arte and circus clowns, a slapstick was originally a harmless pedal consisting of 2 pieces of wood that slapped together to create a resounding whack when the pedal struck someone. Kind of the same way you do as kids. Wait, that sounded wrong. What I was trying to say is you can compare it to the times you and your sibling or friend, if you're an only child, in which case I envy you, would fake hitting each other by, if it looked like you hit the other person, you just clapped your other hand and made it look like you slapped them. That's kind of the Stone Age version of slapstick. Oh, that's an easy save, goddamn. The most famous executor of this comedy was of course Charlie Chaplin, which was probably the first thing you thought of when you heard the word slapstick, like some kind of abstract buzzword that just triggered your memories of good old Charlie. And this is really the time this problem started. Of course, it was already present during the times of normal clown shows and commedia dell'arte, but this is where it really came into fruition and gained a lot more attraction as a concept, basically evolving further and further throughout time, like a fucking Pokemon. That's funny because you can actually compare it to that one useless fish Pokemon, Magikarp, that just flaps around barely living and eventually evolves into this giant goddamn Hydra. To showcase how violence against masculine characters was really normalized with slapstick, I will now use my powers as Zoom call leader to share this video with you. As you can see, Charlie just goes around beating everyone up for no apparent reason. I mean, it's not like they're his boss or anything, forcing him to work there. They're just fellow employees working the same shit job as him. Now, you might think this is not all that bad as it's done in a cartoonish way and all around it's really not that violent. Now, normally you'd be right, but in this situation, there are two massive problems with your argument and they both kind of collide with each other. The first problem being that this will be used everywhere so often it will just snowball into being normal. Hell, the fact you don't think there is any problem with this violence, however cartoonish it may be, appearing as a joke, proves how normal of a joke in Hollywood this has already become. And this leads us to our second problem, which we can see in the same film. Just watch. Here you can see Charlie chasing a woman down the street. Now, to be fair, there is a joke built around this, as you're supposed to laugh at the way he chases after her, making it the same kind of violent joke but in a cartoonish way. But let's be honest, you're not laughing at this clip for that reason. Nowadays, it's because this would totally not be okay in cinema. You would never see this again. So it kind of becomes this abstract kind of dark humor that you just laugh at. Hell, even when this came out, they knew this was dark and out of place. So they threw in this scene. She runs to a police officer explaining the issue, and the police officer immediately shoots into action. This is where a real problem lies, because we're going to play one of my favorite games called Switch the Roles. Here we have a clip of a beautiful lady being chased down the street by a big old creep that looks like Adolf. She runs to an officer who immediately shoots into action, chasing the creep down. Now let's switch the roles. When switching the role to a heterosexual male, what do we think happens? Is it A, the man runs to the police officer who bravely stands up for a fellow man? Is it B, the man bravely stands up for himself? Or is it C? It's C. It's C. I'm sorry, the answer is C. We will go into more detail about this answer in the comedy aspect of this video, explaining why it would be done this way. But for now, let me just give you the base synopsis of the situation. The script goes as follows. The man runs down the street screaming for help, as Charlie chases him down like the creep he is. The man runs into an officer and explains the situation. The officer laughs in his face and lets Charlie run after him. And since this is Switch the Roles, this scenario goes for both a female and male perpetrator. The reason the real problem lies here is because of the simple fact that this showcases how normal it is for a male character to be hurt in comparison to a female character, even in a cartoonish way. Most likely it is this way because men since the beginning of time have always been showcased to be the sturdy, indestructible hunters, and therefore couldn't possibly be hurt by a simple slap or broom to the face, therefore also making it okay to just use it for comedic purposes. And while I'm not going to stand here and say that a man shouldn't be able to handle this level of violence, in fact, even females should, making it a normality and even a joke, of course, won't affect society in the right way after long periods of time, compared to making it a literal crime when done to females. These are all things I'll discuss further in the why change section, as it is all quite important. So in correlation to this section, you've learned that in the age of slapstick, the violence occurred due to the cartoonish nature it was used in, but as time went on, the cartoonishness of slapstick disappeared, while the normality of using male abuse as comedy stayed. Now I know I said the comedy evolved from a Magikarp to a Hydra, but unfortunately it would be a Hydra with one brain cell, making it the most mentally challenged Pokemon, even more so than the literal fucking rock. To be honest, it evolved, but, you know, just backwards. In the modern day, it's really just used for the sake of violence in scenes that has no reason being in, to get a cheap but almost guaranteed chuckle out of their audience. By the way, I'm not talking about action movies in which violence is a common occurrence throughout the span of an entire movie. For example, the recent movie Bullet Train, starring Brad Pitt, in which violence is used against both male and female characters, but throughout the span of an entire movie to stimulate our monkey caveman brains because human punch, human fights. What I'm talking about are movies in which violence has no place being in, but occurs with a male victim anyways, most of them being comedies, but you probably already guessed that. There are reasons why this problem occurs in the modern day, but sadly not so cartoonish as in the days of slapstick. Let's start off with the dark one of the two main reasons as to why this comedy still frequently appears in movies. Once again, these are not what makes them funny, these are just reasons what makes it okay by Hollywood standards to feature them in films. This first one goes for both sexual abuse and violence. Now this reason is that the character deserves it. This can either be because the character has been a villain of the movie or did something wrong during the movie. Therefore he deserves the assault, either sexual or physical, because it's a form of justice. This is mostly done in prison scenes or cops threatening the male criminal with the act of sexual abuse.
This time next week, I'll be sucking down pina coladas in a hot tub with 6 girls named Amber and Tiffany.
More like taking a shower with 2 guys named Jamal and Jesus, if you know what I mean. And here's the bad news. That thing you're sucking on, it's not a pina colada.
Another justifier occurs based on a myth that men can't really be violated by women, because men are always willing to go around her too anyway, and all men want is sex, or at least should want sex all the time. This is why some sexual abuse scenes are played out and directed as immoral sexual fantasies, with the male victim enjoying the assault to a degree. You might have noticed that after the assault, there is no lingering trauma, and the movie just carries on as if nothing happened. A lot of the times, the scene isn't even mentioned again, as it's played off as being harmless, even though all these jokes are based on non-consensual interactions. When a scene is mentioned again, the other characters express admiration or envy to even congratulating the male character for being assaulted. For example, the movie Wedding Crashers, which shows a multitude of instances of the problem we're talking about today.
Claire's mom just made me grab her Hooters.
Well, snap out of it. What, a hot older woman made you feel her cans? Stop crying like a little girl. What were they like anyway? They look pretty good. Are they real?
This is done so heavily, you can actually see the congratulating or envy parts seep through into the real world in those man versus women social experiment videos.
Stop, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. Stop. Come on. Stop grabbing me. Come on. Bro, I don't want to do anything. Why?
He's gonna give it to me. He's gonna give it
but
to me.
I don't want to do anything. She's taking advantage of me. This ain't fair.
Come on.
You're crazy.
No.
Come on.
I I can't emphasize enough how big of a problem this is, people. I mean, comedies are becoming real life. Does anybody want that? Does anybody want to see Adam Sandler running around constantly? I don't think so. Another reason that is seen constantly in movies and series is that the male character is an idiot, due to which misunderstandings happen, and that results into the male character getting slapped or kicked in the balls. Hence, this reason is mostly for violence and not really for sexual abuse, but I could see that being some sort of plot twist in certain movies. Now, people of the internet, I am truly and deeply sorry I have to bring this news to you, but this reason is used most frequently and most annoyingly in anime.
当然だろ。俺はボツが多いし、毎日書かないと。やっていくんだ
小手川。これ、お兄さんが。
すみません。お茶とお菓子を持ってきました。村の特産品なんで、ぜひ食べてもらいたくて。ロイ
ド様！偉いよな。まあ前からこういうの俺の仕事だけど。どうか！お前どうして？
早くしねさ女子の部屋勝手に入るとか何考えてんの？変態！すいません早く出てけ！ののです。お姉様、女房さんにお願いして病人食を。
え？
予定してやるのです！
Just like you, I am deeply disappointed that Japan couldn't be better on this one like it is with everything else. As to not be a hypocrite, I must now burn all my One Piece merch and delete all my fan art. Truly saddened. Rest in peace. Quick side note that I didn't find many male perpetrators of this reason that just use violence after a misunderstanding, as it would most likely just result into sexual abuse again. As I said, all men want to do is rumble, break their IKEA beds, and put it back together again. And so the third reason, and that also being the last reason as to why by Hollywood standards it's okay for this kind of comedy to occur in movies, is it doesn't need a reason, only guaranteed laughs. And so we have arrived what is most likely the core part of this whole video, all the rest being the delicious appetizer and this leading up to the extremely important dessert. Le pièce de résistance, you could say. There, had to give the French some love as to get more views. Finally, we can return to our switch the role script and to explain why this would be funny. Even though about half of you already have a vision in your mind as to why this is the case, we'll still go over it anyways. I indeed purposefully didn't give the male victim a figure and barely any movement because that would spoil the main comedy aspect. So now let us revisit this old script. Indeed, the main reason both sexual abuse and violence are funny when used against the male victim is because of the humiliation that comes with it. In this case, more specifically, the emasculation. This is also why when talking about abuse, especially sexual abuse, the male victim is almost always heterosexual, as the ultimate humiliation for a man in a patriarchal society is being perceived as feminine. Another nice example for this emasculation can be found by comparing the two scenes from Neptune's Daughter, in which they sing Baby It's Cold Outside.
Oh, baby, it's cold outside.
This evening has been
Hoping that you drop in.
very nice.
I'll hold your hands, they're just like ice. But baby, it's bad out there.
Say, what's in this
No
drink?
cabs to be had out there.
I wish I knew how
Your eyes are like stars
to
right
break
now.
this spell.
I'll take your hat,
Your hair looks swell.
I simply must go.
Baby, it's cold outside.
The answer is
But
no.
baby, it's cold outside.
The welcome has
How
been
lucky that you dropped
so
in.
nice and warm.
Look out the window at that storm.
But baby, it's cold outside.
I've got to go away.
Baby, it's cold outside.
This evening has
Been hoping that you'd drop
so
in.
very nice.
I'll hold your hand. They're just like
I
I
want the
hold.
neighbors my
But baby, it's bad out there.
Say what's in these
No
streets.
cabs to be had out there.
I wish I knew
Your
how
eyes are like stars
to
right
break
now.
this spell.
I'll take your hat. Your hair looks
I ought to say no, no,
Mind if I
senor.
move in
At
close?
least I'm going to say that I tried.
What's the sense of hurting my
I
pride?
really can't
Oh,
stay.
baby, don't hold out,
Oh,
baby.
but it's cold outside.
This gender flipping is often done with the intention to raise awareness of predatory men and any sexual assault that happens in the workspace. While this is a good intention, it ultimately falls flat, as even if they did highlight the issue, it reinforces the idea that sexual abuse against men is funny and that men can be raped. Great News being a good example.
I'm sorry. I seem to have dropped my pen. Would you mind bending over and picking it up?
Yes, of course.
Clumsy me. Slower this time. That wasn't sexual harassment. They wanted it.
Even the famous movie Paddington featured this by having Mr. Brown dress up as a cleaning lady. Now, this might seem as a bit of a far-fetch, as I myself laughed at this scene because a man dressing up and trying to act like a woman is abnormal and funny, and when switching the roles to a woman dressing up and acting like a man, it pretty much results in the same thing. But even then, I think we can all agree that this is very cheap comedy. Quick little warning that we're going to use the switch the roles quite frequently, as there really is no better example to showcase how often it appears, even when you think I'm nitpicking the smallest of instances. Hell, you can even use it yourself if you think I skipped over a few scenes and forgot to switch roles myself. This will also make it easier for you to understand. The emasculation goes hand in hand with the up-and-coming comedy aspects by either picking and matching like Walter White cooking his blue candy, or just doing a straight-up fusion dance with them, creating the ultimate humiliation. Being the good human I am, I can't help but be concerned for your mental well-being at this point, so we'll start off with the easiest one of the bunch, so that your brain can cool down a bit and I won't be sued for irreparable damages. The very first of the sub-aspects being the dark humor that comes with using violence or sexual abuse in scenes. Now, they label it as dark humor when really it isn't. Now, that's not to say it doesn't fit the definition of dark humor, no. If you look through Google, all definitions fit with male abuse as a topic for these kinds of jokes perfectly. It's how movies use it that doesn't fit with dark humor. Dark humor is a bit abnormal. You always have this version of a shocked laugh, and you have this feeling that you're not really supposed or allowed to laugh at this joke. Hence, it's only used a limited amount of times. Movies, on the other hand, generally don't go for this shocked laugh. The only time I can really think of is with the aftermath of a sexual abuse scene, which we'll get into later. Instead, they go for the easily available chuckle they can milk throughout an entire film. And with this, I kind of gave away the second answer, being that it's not used a limited amount of times. Rather, it's like in GTA, where you can drink endlessly until you can't even see the screen anymore. Dark humor is really more an excuse they use to justify why they still use it and why it's funny, rather than the actual comedy aspect. Instead of dark humor, the comedy more so lies in the over-the-topness of how some of these scenes are displayed, not necessarily showing this assault or violence to be a good thing, but also not treating it like a serious moment either. I couldn't really make a proper opening phrase for this one. It's pretty much because it's not an everyday occurrence that makes it funny. I've basically already said this throughout the video, that it is an abnormality to see a man being chased by another man, and even more so by a woman, because they won't even come talk to you, and if they do, it sounds like they're having their scheduled exorcism on the spot.
Just stop! Just talk normal, that's all you gotta do.
Compared to a woman getting attacked, assaulted, catcalled, or being stuck in an abusive relationship is not an everyday worry nor occurrence to the common man. The most used phrase to emasculate a man, combined with the not everyday occurrence and dark humor aspect, is a phrase you have all heard and might honestly laugh at on the spot by just hearing it. Don't drop the soap. This phrase is nothing more, literally nothing more, than a synonym for a word you're not even allowed to say fully at this point, just because sexual abuse with a male victim is abnormal, and like a lot of people say, man can be raped. If you laugh at this phrase, I really can't blame you. The thoughts that come with this phrase will automatically be those in a comedic light, as it has only been portrayed in that way. The men are emasculated, begging and crying for their mom, once again not in a serious tone but in a humiliating fashion. It cuts to black, and we'll either see the character walking with a limp or talking to his friends about the experience, with them of course in turn laughing at the situation. The limp being the dark humor aftermath we talked about. What happened in this scenario is nothing more than an actual crime and act of violence being used for laughs. And it is done this way in all sexual abuse scenarios with a male victim, whether it be a male perpetrator or a female perpetrator, whether it takes place in jail or in their own house. And the worst part of all this? The actors don't just call it dark humor, which would be bad enough already. They in a way try to justify this comedy by inherently labeling it as pushing boundaries in comedy.
Sector of something. Anytime you're doing any comedy,
somebody's going to do
somebody's
this.
Going to
What
go,
are they going to do? Do the face.
Oh, my word. But that's kind of what we do. We provoke, we prod, we also show a mirror up to what's already existing out there.
The argument they are using here has about as much stability as a cryptocurrency and just doesn't hold water at all. While yes, you can say, oh my, for every type of comedy and joke. Not every type of comedy has affected the real world in this way, when the subject of the joke is one to be taken seriously for one, but the target of the joke is always a male victim being portrayed as feminine and pathetic for even being afraid of rape.
Please don't sexually assault me, I'm already too sad. Hey fellas, my heart's already been raped.
And claiming that this is somehow revolutionary or pushing boundaries has to be one of the biggest lies I've ever seen, as it's nothing more than a joke to get a cheap laugh out of their audience, while at the same time disregarding the seriousness of the topic for one gender but not the other, only further pushing the divide we already have between men and women. In the scene of Charlie chasing that woman, the situation is treated pretty seriously after just a few seconds of the joke appearing, because you have to realize the joke was never in this potential sexual abuse part of this clip. It was when Charlie first saw her and immediately started running after her. Compared to the male scenario, where the joke absolutely lies in the potential sexual abuse part, as a man being chased is so abnormal whilst he is at the same time being emasculated instead of standing up for himself. It even goes so far that characters in the movies themselves realize the absurdness and abnormality of the situation that they cannot help but laugh at it. Hence the cop not taking it seriously. So with a multitude of characters, actors, and even comedians across dozens and dozens of movies and shows don't even take this seriously, why should we?
You said, I don't really like to admit this, she was violent, we both made mistakes, but she was very controlling. And I felt like she called the shots in this relationship.
Well, she locked me in the flat one day. She locked you in the flat? Yeah, she locked me in the flat. Obviously, me being angry, I didn't know the door was locked. I've gone over, I've grabbed the door handle, pulled it, and it's come straight off in my hands. So we're stuck on a three-storey flat, and I've had to jump off a three-storey balcony. I ripped all my back, all my legs, still, and I ended up in hospital, you know, because she won't let me out of the house.
It's not funny, though. Can I tell you why it's not funny? I don't want to upset any of the audience, because I completely appreciate the fact that you're here, but I'll tell you why I don't think you should laugh. If this was the other way around, and a woman was sat here, and a bloke had locked her in a flat, and she had to jump out and injured herself, you lot would not be laughing. You would be saying, he's a complete nightmare, he should be locked up, and that's disgraceful. But somehow, if it happens to a bloke, that's funny. That's not funny, is it? That isn't.
The world is starting to treat male abuse, and frankly men in general, like shit. Across the internet, there are a multitude of clips, interviews, articles, and videos ridiculing the idea and act of male abuse. Famous example being the Terry Crews incident, in which he states that sexual abuse is not about the sexual desire at all, rather it's about power and control.
I was sexually assaulted by a successful Hollywood agent. The assault lasted only minutes, but what he was effectively telling me while he held my genitals in his hand was that he held the power, that he was in control. This is how toxic masculinity permeates culture. As I shared my story, I was told over and over that this was not abuse, that this was just a joke, that this was just horseplay. But I can say that one man's horseplay is another man's humiliation.
Naturally, this is also included in the comedies we've spoken about today, humorizing the act of taking control, as there is nothing more shameful for a man to have someone take control over them and being perceived as feminine. The simple idea of a man being controlled and beat up by his wife makes a lot of us view him as weak and pathetic. Male victim centers are looked down upon as toxic masculinity, and simply because the number of male victims is much lower than those of female victims, we do not have to treat it like a serious issue. Terry Crews himself even said that if he came forward with this, he would have been laughed out of the police station. Why? Well, he's a giant of a man. He couldn't possibly be abused or harassed. And I'm not saying a man shouldn't be able to fight back. I'm not saying a man shouldn't be able to stand up for himself and fight back. If you can go learn some self-defense or go to a gym, absolutely. But Terry Crews is a big man, isn't he? And he was still assaulted. How is that possible? Well, firstly, Terry didn't want to use violence as a countermeasure anymore, as advised from his wife. But secondly, and more importantly, this was a different form of abuse. A form of abuse one cannot defend themselves against, no matter how physically strong they are. To all the people out there asking, how can a man possibly be raped? First of all, I think you need an IQ test. It will reveal much. But secondly, you might go back to the men always want sex argument and therefore can be assaulted. For this, I want to give you a citation from RAIN, aka the Rape, Abuse and Incest National Network, stating, in no way does an erection invite unwanted sexual activity. Normal physiological responses do not in any way imply that you wanted, invited, or enjoyed the assault. Now I thought this was common sense, but here you go. Now what happened when Terry first came forward about the assault? Well, he was laughed at, especially by 50 Cent, who posted multiple memes about the incident. A more recent example of how unbelievable of a thing abuse against men has become is the recent Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. People were convinced Amber was a victim up until about an hour into the trial, and it only went downhill for her from there. The trial showcased horrific audio clips showcasing how mentally and emotionally abused Johnny was.
See how that works out for you.
That fake laugh. That fake laugh is too much to take.
No, I'm sure she's...
That fake laugh is so disgusting,
I'm
man.
sure she's great. I'm sure she's great.
thinking that you've been giving me some
No.
of the best performances in
No,
the fucking
you're
tragedy.
right, I don't. It's all about performance.
It's about performance for you. Oh, Amber, I don't regret. I don't regret.
Oh, what else?
I
What
don't
else
regret.
that you do? Oh, come on.
I don't
Be
regret.
worse.
No, I
Come
don't
on.
regret.
Lay it on me. What else? What else other thing do you want to add?
Can't talk to
You
you when you
fucking
sound
lying
like
piece
Foggy
of shit.
Bear.
What? Oh,
Like
no,
a
I
kid's
want
show.
to know.
Yeah,
I want to know.
Get out your Ubers out
I'm
there.
kind of waiting. You go get it.
Yeah, I'll be in the
Wait, is there no other place for you to run in your 15 other houses to go run? Come on, go be a real married man and go deal with your shit the way that a man does. Go run to the next house.
I wish I didn't
Every
know.
man does.
Yeah.
Go.
Going
Run
through
away. I know it's
with
hard to
your
look at yourself.
fucking ridiculous
I know.
plan.
It's
Your
hard.
panicked fucking plan.
It's hard. It's hard.
Screwing everybody else
Poor
over
thing.
to get
You're
your
right, I
fucking.
tried.
get
That's
you
what I
want.
do.
You're the most spoiled fucking brat. And you've got everybody out here almost
Oh,
full, but it
you're
don't
right.
last long.
You're right.
I've
I'm
been
sorry.
here a lot longer
You're
than
right. You got to
because
figure it out.
You don't have. Figure out what you have to offer as opposed to going out and get your.
Mocking him and belittling him for being so weak as a man. Where have we seen that before? Luckily, Johnny Depp got a massive uproar of people hurrying to his side and ultimately won the trial. But what I want to talk about is about a shocking statistic that came up during this trial by the forensic psychologist Dr. Shannon Curry, stating that 90% of male abuse victims are labeled as the abuser, as that is a more likely and more believable accusation than the female being the perpetrator. The police will naturally believe this claim. The man's life will be ruined, he will lose a job, all his friends, and the woman, who is the false accuser and likely the real perpetrator, won't receive any charges. Reports show that 1 in 33 American men have experienced an attempted or completed rape in their lifetime, and 1 out of 10 rape victims being male, with the chances that being a male victim are 5 times higher for college students between the age of 18 to 24. This might seem like a small number compared to the statistic showing that 1 out of every 6 American women are rape victims. But it's still a sign that male rape victims are a real thing, and men can in fact be raped, having the same or even harsher consequences afterward. This is not even taking into account abuse victims, not to mention victims being accused of being the abuser. It's great that Johnny won. It was an eye-opening event for many people and a step into the right direction of taking male abuse seriously. But let's be honest here. The only reason this is the case is because this was broadcasted live all over the world, and people witnessed the story unfold before their eyes. And Johnny already had a large fan base behind him. If this had just been a normal trial behind closed doors, and after 3 weeks an article would pop up stating Johnny Depp had won, people would flee to Amber's side, defending her and saying how this is just the patriarchy in its full form once again, and how we should fight for women's rights. The people from the reports I showed you would probably not win the trial, and even if they did, they would be looked down upon. There is a line from a music video by James Lee that I absolutely love, and it sums it up perfectly.
Did you see Johnny Depp today? I think he's looking sad. He's got the cool vibe and a cigarette, but man, he got it bad. 'Cause didn't you know that even men sometimes get abused? Yet society has forgotten me, and I don't know what to do when everyone fucks you in the ass and doesn't give a shit. Because I'm not Johnny. But good for you, Johnny. 'Cause she ain't gonna shit in your bed anymore.
Because I'm not Johnny. We are at a point where male victims use comedy to deal with it, and having watched this video, I think it's pretty clear why that is the case. They don't know any different. It's only been shown to be a joke, so it should be dealt with as a joke, compared to women for whom it is treated as a crime. Hence, they know it's a crime. Though that is not to say that dealing with it through comedy is inherently a bad thing, as having a victim mindset ultimately won't get you anywhere. Though both laughing at it and treating yourself like a victim are both far ends of a spectrum. Instead, we could just treat it seriously. While I am very happy that abuse against women is slowly but surely being treated seriously in the world and justice system, the one against male victims probably won't ever be if it continues to be used as a joke or a form of comedy, scaring victims to even come forward in the first place for the shame that comes with it. Shame for being a victim. Jesus. It probably can change to a degree, and movies will have to adapt with this new outlook on male victims, but a quicker solution will always be appreciated and is likely for the better. By the way, for anyone heavily resonating with this video and in need of help, I've linked the RAIN website in the description, and you can get help from them 24/7 by calling this number. Now, I don't want to come off as this holiest of holy saints that can do no wrong. I generally laugh at these kinds of jokes, especially in the meme format or when done by a comedian. Most likely it's because most comedians know how to take a subject like abuse and put it onto the right target, making it funny but not actively laughing at a or the victim. While with movies, they're just fucking lazy, man. And memes, they're creative with it. I mean, have you seen what our humor is like nowadays? It's not that hard to make us laugh. Ultimately, I can't change people laughing at certain jokes, nor can I reshape the film industry as a whole. There's something about violence that just makes us laugh in this sadistic kind of way, especially with good timing and energy. But what we can absolutely do is, when using violence, make the aftermath serious. For example, with this meme, you laugh at the comedic timing and the amplified bang sounds.
Stimulate your senses.
But if we were to let this play out, and you'd see the guy's actually pretty hurt, you take it more seriously, or at least feel bad for him. Once again, there will be people that laugh, but that will be the more kind of sadistic or even masochist laugh again. If they really wanted to push boundaries and mirror the real world, imagine how much they could shock their audience by letting the drop the soap scenario play out in a non-comedic way, while the drop the soap part is done comedically. That would shock an audience and push boundaries. Repeating the same joke over and over again and claiming you're pushing boundaries is like going to the gym, repeating the same amount of reps with the same weight for over a year, and claiming you're on progressive overload, trying to bulk. You might say, oh my god, that's too confronting. I just want to watch a movie and not deal with these issues. On the one hand, I partially agree with you. Of course, in a comedy movie, you shouldn't be confronted with this topic so head-on when you just wanted a night of laughter, especially in family-friendly movies. What a fun night with the kids that'll be. But on the other hand, it's also used as a joke in these same family-friendly movies, so they should just leave it out. I also believe this should definitely be used as a topic in dramas and other genres to subvert expectations. Or just have an entire movie made around this one topic, as movies are often the only gateway we have to showcasing these topics to a larger audience. The main problem is that it's become incredibly generalized to be used as a joke, even in kids' shows and movies. Like I said, Paddington used it, but even the Powerpuff Girls did at one point.
Love is in the air. Can't you just smell it?
All in all, this is a difficult and serious issue to tackle that drastically needs a change of diaper. It is also still my opinion. I am not the central point of knowledge for the universe that knows all rights and wrongs. I hope some of you might be inspired to use this info to genuinely shock your audiences, actually pushing boundaries instead of holding one in place. In this day and age, it might be a risk, as highlighting the issues of men is heavily looked down upon. So it might not be very high on a recommendation list or win an Oscar, but you sure as hell will have a lot of people's respect, including mine, which might not be much, but hey, it's a supporter extra. I sincerely thank you for watching through this video. A lot of effort went into making it, and probably also into watching it. This might be the most risky first video on the internet, so I'm not expecting a huge wave of love and friendship coming my way like it used to be in those kid shows. Sorry for the time jump here, as you can see it's dark now. This proves I am indeed not a god that can transcend time. But anyways, you might think after watching this video I'm quite similar to pyrocynical. I mean, I speak in the same way and tempo, I'm standing up, which for a lot of YouTubers is quite a feat. We have the same kind of jokes, like making fun of Moist Critical and an occasional Breaking Bad reference in there. You might even say we're related. You're right, I confess. I am indeed Pyro's long-lost brother. To provide evidence, I have the Cynical book, which is a book I drew as a kid to cope with reality. As you can see, as kids, Pyrocynical used to put fairy tales on his ass and televisions on his head, so that he could consume all media in an unnatural fashion, while I sat around and actually watched the television as to consume information that way. So there you have it, I am the Jessica Hyde to Pierre, and you'll almost only get that reference if you're a Pyro fan. Pyro, my dear brother, if you do somehow end up watching this, please do tell me if you don't want me to use your format anymore. I can always use "Hello, I'm pyrocynical" as to avoid any voice cracks. In all seriousness, I really do think the way Pyro does his analysis is the perfect way to do one. It almost seems meticulously thought out, probably due to him putting TVs on his head. If you haven't watched him, his YouTube channel is linked in the description below. Once again, thank you for spending some time of your busy day watching this video. I will be releasing a new video next week, and it will probably be the most controversial video ever on my channel from all the future projects I have planned, so look out for that. With all that said, you can call me Tempest Vanguard.